Hello everyone. In this guide, I will show you a Condi DPS Harbinger build that can do on average between 33 and 34k DPS with a very simple rotation and only using few skills. The armor, weapons and trinkets will be all full Viper. For the runes, we are using Trapper runes. For the weapons, we are using Pistol, Warhorn with Sigil of Torment and Sigil of Earth. And for the relic, we are using the Fractal relic. The best utility you can use is the Writ of Masterful Malice, or if it was too expensive, you can use the Furious Tuning Crystal instead. And for the food, we will use the Meaty Asparagus Skewer. You can craft the Trapper runes from an Armorsmith or a Leather Worker or a Tailor that is at least level 400. And for that, you will need the recipe for the Trapper, which you can get from the trading post easily. The second best option, if you can't craft them, will be the Superior Rune of Tormenting. And if that was too expensive, you will use Superior Rune of the Nightmare from the Dungeon Vendor instead. And if all the other options were not good for you, you can use the Superior Rune of the Renegade, which is very cheap from the trading post. If the Sigil of Torment was expensive, you can use the Sigil of Bursting instead. You can get the Relic of Fractal from the Relic Vendor in Wizard's Tower, and you can also get it from Wold's Vault. I have a guide that explains everything about relics, and you will find a link for it in the description below. For the build, our traits will be Curses 2, 1, 3, Soul Reaping 1, 1, 3, and Harbinger 3, 3, 3. For our utility skills, we have Signet of Vampirism, Undeath, and Spite, and then we have Blood's Power and Plague Lance as our elite. In the Harbinger trait line, we have the Adapt trait will enable us to do more condition damage per stack of Blight we will have, and you will easily have the maximum amount of 25 almost the entire fight, and it will also make our skill number 2 apply poison on top of the Torment. And our Grandmaster trait will increase our condition damage by 240, and it will constantly apply Torment to the enemies in our radius whenever we are in Shroud. In the Soul Reaping, Soul Barbs is going to enable us to do more damage by 10% when we enter and exit Shroud, and Doomfire will make our Shroud skill number 1 constantly apply burning on top of the other conditions it will do. In Curses, we are going to apply a lot of bleeding from this trait because we will have a very high critical chance, and then those two traits, Master of Corruption and Plague Sending, will work together very well. Because from Master of Corruption, you will apply extra conditions on yourself when you use Blood of Power and Plague Lance, and then with Plague Sending, you will go to Shroud and send those conditions to the enemy, which will enable you to do more damage. And from this trait, you will have 2% critical chance per condition on the enemy, which will be a lot, and you will gain extra condition damage based on your precision, which will also be a lot. And from this trait, you will do even more condition damage. The way we will use this build will heavily rely on the Harbinger Shroud. Anytime it is available, just go to it and you will spam your skill number 1 and 2 anytime it is of cooldown. You will ignore the other 3. When you are out of Shroud, we will use Pistol 2, Pistol 3, Warhorn 5, and then we will also use Blood is Power. And anytime Plague Lance is available, you will also use it. This will be one of the best sources of damage you will have. And we will leave all the sickness on passive. And since Plague Lance will only be available a couple of times in the fight, basically, outside of Shroud, you will have 4 skills to use. Pistol 2, 3, Warhorn 5, and Blood is Power. And in Shroud, you will only use 2 skills, 1 and 2. The opener, when you first start a fight, will be using Plague Lance and Blood is Power, and then because of the Plague Sending trait and Master of Corruption, we will go immediately to our Shroud, which will send the conditions to our enemies. So Plague Lance, 1 charge of Blood is Power, and then you will immediately go to your Shroud, spam number 2 and auto attack whenever they are ready. We will stay in Shroud until Life Force is completely done, and only then we are going to use Pistol 2, 3, 5 and whatever charges of Blood is Power remaining, and anytime your Shroud is ready, you will go to it and repeat. When you need CCs to break bar, you have Pistol 3 and Warhorn 4, and then in Shroud, you have your skill 4 and skill 5, all of them are very good for CCs. There are a couple of things we can change in the build based on the situation. If we needed extra CCs, we can use the Summon Flesh Golem as our elite, which will give us access to charge, which is a very good CC skill. Also, to fully benefit from Plague Lance, you needed to stay for the entire duration of about 10 seconds. And in some fights, the boss will constantly move, like in Mitrin and Dragonstorm for example. In that case, we will use Elixir of Ambition instead. Also, if you didn't have a healer in the party, Blood is Power can kill you. And so if that is the case, you can use Poison Cloud instead. It will still do decent damage on the enemy, but it will not affect you as much. If you need a Cleanses and Stun Break, Spectral Walk and Will of Power are both very good options for that. In fractals, especially in hard ones, this setup may be too squishy and you may find yourself struggling with sustain. In that case, we will use the oysters with spicy sauce food, which is going to reduce the damage by 10% and still give us some condition damage. And in the cursed straight line, we will use parasitic contagion instead, which will give us 5% of our condition damage we will do as heal. If that was not enough, you will remove soul reaping and you will use blood magic instead, and from here we will have blood bank and then vampiric presence, and also we will use blood bond. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you found this guide helpful, please subscribe and give it a like to support the channel and see more guides in the future. I will now leave you with some footage for this build in action. Thank you very much for your time and I will see you in the next guide.